On the next Insights, 2 lists of 5. The Nene, I'o, and Honu might be on one list. The Coqui frog, miconia, and fire ants could be found on the other. We gave several environmental agencies a difficult assignment. Collaborate, prioritize, and come up with a list of the top 5 indigenous species we must save. And then the top 5 invasive species we have to eliminate. Check out the results. This live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Laura Yamada. Well, Hawaii is often called the endangered species capital of the world. As of today, the number of ESA listed species for the Hawaiian Islands is now at 557, 13 threatened and 544 endangered. Now, this represents nearly half of all of the threatened endangered species listed in the entire United States. Human activity and invasive species have created an ongoing crisis that places many threatened species on the brink of extinction. So we've asked tonight's panel, which is comprised of conservationists from the government and the community, to select what they believe are the top 5 most endangered native species and top 5 invasive species that most urgently needs to be removed. Tough to make it 5. We reveal what they are tonight and what can be done to ensure the survival of our unique and fragile ecosystem. So we look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, tweet, call about your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. All right, now to our guest. Stacey Robinson is a research ecologist for NOAA's Hawaiian monk seal research program, and she holds a doctorate in wildlife ecology and has been working in research and conservation for over 15 years. Her position with NOAA focuses on understanding the biology of the Hawaiian monk seals and threats to their population. Christy Martin is the program manager and public information officer for the coordinating group of alien pest species. This partnership coordinates and catalyzes action among government and non-government partners to protect the economy, environment, and public health from invasive species. Joshua Fisher is a wildlife biologist for the past 11 years and has served in the Invasive Species Program for the Pacific Islands branch of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The program's primary focus is to prevent invasive species from getting established and negatively affecting the natural resources the agency is entrusted to protect on behalf of the American people. And Mark Fox is with the Nature Conservancy's Hawaii program, where he works on government advocacy and policy. The Nature Conservancy is a global nonprofit dedicated to conserving lands and waters. Locally, it manages a network of native forest and coastal nature preserves totaling 43,000 acres. And that just kind of gives you an idea of the scope of what all of you are dealing with. And I mean, thank you so much, all of you, for being here, because this is just so many important topics and issues that affect all of us here in the Hawaiian Islands and beyond. So we compiled some lists. We tried, right? This was tough. Before we kind of get to some of the lists themselves, maybe just I could get a couple of you to chirp in. Sort of what was on your mind when you thought about what, because you had to choose, what would be on the top of your list? What was on your mind when you thought about compiling that list?
Well, it was really interesting when we first were contacted. It made us think, well, are we talking the worst, the most endangered species, the most threatened ones? But when we all had our discussion together, we all chose not just a few of the endangered species, the ones that are at risk of disappearing, but we also chose 2 species that aren't endangered but provide the habitat, the homes, the food, the resources that support hundreds and hundreds of other species. So 2 of our top picks actually are the tree species Ohia lehua, some people call it, and our corals, because they're so important.
That's a good point. I mean, all of these things are connected at some point, either directly or indirectly.
Yep, I think, and Christy's right, and you're correct. When we had this sort of task, it wasn't hard for us to agree, frankly. it was, limiting our list because any of the things that we brought up, whether they were monk seals or EEV, certain Hawaiian forest birds in terms of, threatened and endangered species, that wasn't a problem. It was keeping that list shorter and, talking about some iconic species that folks can understand and are aware of, but also it's not about any individual, plant or bird or mammal, and it's not about any individual invasive species. If the whole forest doesn't work or the whole coral reef isn't healthy and the fisheries are healthy, then none of the endangered species are gonna do well. And so it really is about taking care of that whole system, keeping it healthy from a variety of invasive species, because there's a bunch of other problems out there that we need to, address too, and that's ocean warming and acidification and temperature change and storms. So
we didn't tell everybody we're going to be here until midnight.
No.
So we'll have more time to talk about. All right, let's get to our first list. I think this is the top 5 indigenous species. Let's take a look at that. You guys can see on the screen behind you there. We're going to, again, I know this was tough to narrow it down to 5. We're going to talk about Ohia, EEV, the yellow-faced bee. Some people more familiar with certain ones than others. Of course, corals gets a lot of discussion, and the Hawaiian monk seals. When you thought about, Stacey, putting this list together, what were your thoughts as to what, at this point in time, you wanted the people to at least maybe put a little more focus on?
So in terms of Hawaiian monk seals or in terms of the overall list?
I know that's your focus,
yes,
with the Hawaiian
but
monk
I think
seals, no doubt.
So yes, so definitely I wanted to get Hawaiian monk seals in there so we can talk about those. But in terms of crafting the entire list, just like Mark was talking about, getting to some things beyond just these individual species, we really wanted these very few 5 species to really cover a lot of different aspects of the Hawaiian environment from Mauka to Makai, and represent a lot of different environmental threats that imperil the environment, so that each of these species kind of represented some of the bigger pictures of environmental dangers that Hawaii is facing as well.
I think some of these endangered species people are a little bit more exposed to, but some of the work that some of you do, Josh, you were talking about before we started the show, people don't necessarily see all the time. However, that also makes it more difficult to figure out how to deal with the problem, because it's difficult for anybody to get there and to work with the area. And you've had a lot of experience with that.
Yeah,
it's tough.
I think that's one of the difficulties with some of our native species is, some of the lowlands are so heavily impacted that they're not able to see these like in person, and that really makes a big difference in how it affects people, and really gets them concerned and connected to these species and wanting to take action and wanting to see them thrive. And so that is a significant challenge, is really to get this exposure, to let people know that historically these species were all the way from the tops of the mountains down to the lowlands, and we don't necessarily see that as much anymore.
It's a good thing to remind people. Now, you guys all kind of touched on this, but Teresa from Kauai, she put this in a good way. She said, "What criteria did you consider when selecting the 5 most invasive species, at least at the moment?" What would you say was your criteria?
I think one of the criteria we considered was the impact that they have on other species, and particularly thinking about our endangered list, we thought of invasive species where there might be some crossover between those lists, or just a number of other species that those invaders might endanger.
Let's take a look at that, by the way, and then we'll get to you guys, some of you other ones to respond to this. Top 5 invasive species. Let's take a look at that list that we have. So we're looking at rats, mosquitoes, pigs, feral pigs, free-roaming cats, a lot of people refer to it as feral cats, and mongooses. I keep wanting to say mongoose. Invasive species, invasive seaweed, I should say, rapid ohia, and little fire ants. We made the list a little bit longer. A little tough to condense that one, a little tough to condense. But you see the crossover. You see the crossover when you look at a list like that, how we're dealing with a very entwined problem here.
Yeah, when we pulled that list together, again, like Stacy was saying, we wanted to look at things that have a broader impact than just one particular concern. Take little fire ants, for example. I mean, that's something that is a big detriment to not just our ecology and our environment, but our agriculture, economy, to the health and well-being of people. I mean, you talk to anybody on Hawaii Island who's been stung or had their pet stung by these ants. It really affects not only our ecology but our quality of life and our health and well-being here. So when we looked at, and the person who sent in the question, what was our criteria, to try to give a sense of the breadth of the issue and how it not just impacts the environment. It's not that something that environmentalists should be worried about or thinking about. It affects all of us across our economy, across our ecology, across our health and quality of life here. So that was really factored into looking at some of those things on that list.
No doubt. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was just going to say, in the problems with lists, I mean, we're often asked to create lists for a range of aspects, and what is difficult, you really have to take the species in context, because there may be one invasive on one island and not on the other. So are you talking about ones that are present that you're actively controlling, or are you worried about the threat of them being introduced? And what species are they affecting? Are they affecting multiple species? So I think for a lot of times for people, it's where you're coming from and what context that you're talking about. And that's what makes creating the list so difficult, because if you're talking about quarantine, it's just like, well, are you talking about things coming into the state? Are you talking about things being moved inter-island?
What's helped when all of you have had to work with lawmakers, with policymakers, with different entities where you need their support? What has helped as far as helping to translate to them the importance, the urgency, and the focus that they can latch on to? What have you seen? Because all of you been working in these fields for quite some time now.
Sure.
Over time, what have you learned actually works?
The most important thing is really to get them out there into the environment. So many of them have never been into a native forest. A lot of our trails, really, you're hard-pressed to see a native tree, especially on Oahu. But when we get them out into the forest and we accustom their eyes to what they're seeing, we share with them, what the challenges are, and that this tree that happens to be beautiful purple on the underside, well, actually that's an invasive tree, and it takes over watersheds. It's miconia. Then they understand, and then when they see how far we have to go to be able to build a fence or try to work on monk seals, they really understand what we need to do, and they feel for the species more. There's nothing like getting out there and really understanding, putting yourself in
I would think you're in your line of work in particular, because monk seals, for example, they get a lot of attention. It's very easy to identify them, but in your line of work, oftentimes it doesn't stand out in the same way.
Well, I think going back to that question, I think what is also a challenge is some species are really cryptic, and like where you have some ant species and you have a ground nesting seabird, and you could have yellow crazy ants or little fire ant, all over the bird, eating its eyes and stuff. I mean, it's really graphic. It's really, powerful. But you have other ant species that are modifying the environment, and it's just not apparent. You don't see the effects, but they are having effects. And I think that's what is a little more challenging, is to communicate some of the issues that are happening when they're not as apparent.
Yeah. I think, you ask about policymakers and legislators, and been at that for, more than 15 years. But I have never, with all the sort of political turmoil we go through these days and, partisanship, I still don't find any legislators that oppose, protecting our environment. That's not the case. And they're wrestling with really difficult issues about, schools and roads and social services and, an environment. And so one of the things, as Christy says, is really important to get them out in the field, get wet and dirty, see this stuff. I always today, this afternoon, up at the Capitol, meeting with Representative Jarrett Kehokolole from the Windward Side. Super guy, came out of the UH Environmental Law Program, knows these issues, but yesterday he went on a hike, Po'omoho, I think, with the DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resource staff, got up into the forest, put his hands on a fence, and he said told me today, getting up there, seeing that fence, touching it, understanding what it was for, that you could climb over it. It's not to keep people out of the forest. It was to, move pigs out of a particular area, but allow them to be down below for hunting and, those kinds of things, which is important. But it was, he was, enthusiastic and moved by that, and I was really appreciative of it. What we need to do too, though, given what they're wrestling with, is be clear about plans, demonstrate how there are things that we can do to successfully address invasive species, and it's not, although it can seem overwhelming, that these challenges we're talking about are going to talk more about, there are things we can do, and we can be successful at managing invasive species and helping ecosystems thrive so they can be lots of fish to look at, to eat, so that there can be healthy forests for lots of water. So us having good plans, being efficient with money, and doing a good job to demonstrate that to policymakers to help them do the things they want to do anyway. It's not all that bad.
Well, and I think one of the other things that really helps, or is really important, in addition to connecting to just the policymaker, helping them connect these endangered or invasive species issues to people, right? And whether it's how an endangered species might be a really special and unique part of Hawaii's ecosystem and something that the people of Hawaii can take pride in, can enjoy, or whether it's connecting to how the plans that we're suggesting for these species management actually is going to impact, their constituents or not impact their constituents, right? Like if something seems like it's going to be this barricade, or people are worried about beaches being closed off or something like that, making sure that we have room for people in the picture as well as species conservation, and really communicate how that's going to work together, I think is really important. And then along with what Mark was saying about showing that there are things we can do, I think we spend a lot of time convincing people how critical the issues are that we're working on, and it can get a little bit, it can be a little bit of a downer. And so I think celebrating our successes in conservation or endangered species or invasive species removal is just as important as showing that we really can make an impact on some of these issues, is just as important as demonstrating how pressing the issue is.
Great words. I mean, not just experts and scientists, but also educators and champions for what you guys are doing. All right, so let's start breaking it down. So we're just going to kind of go down the list here. I think we're going to start with the list for the endangered species. And we're going to start with number one that we have on the list, which is Ohia. So I think we have kind of a picture here to remind people of what it looks like. I'm sure a lot of people these days have seen it on a hike somewhere, in different areas. 1 million acres, is that right? Nearly 1 million acres that it provides shelter, food, whatnot. I mean, this is huge. The
structure of the forest.
Yeah,
Yep.
It is the most important tree that we have in our native forests. There's more ohia than there are any other native tree species out there. And they occupy about 1 million acres across the state. There's only a couple of islands that don't have ohia. So it's very important to the native species that live there. So everything from tree snails that crawl in the leaves because they're living in the rainforest, the leaves get moldy and the tree snails are eating the mold off of them. So these endangered species really need these plants there. In other areas, they're homes to things like bats. They've got lots of moss and things growing on them. So they're really good at collecting and holding water and sending it into the watershed.
And boy, we've been hearing a lot about rapid ohia. And that's, and we were talking about, what people can do, but when you have something like a fungus or something that can be so easily spread by a spore of some kind, that's tough to wrap your brain around as to how to deal with that.
It is. It's been a really challenge. It's a really tough challenge to educate people about fungal pathogen. I mean, I can hardly say it without tripping over it. It's a microscopic fungal disease that has to enter the tree through an open wound. It infects the tree, and sometimes it can take 2 years for that tree to show outward symptoms. That is, the leaves turn brown. So this tree can be holding this pathogen and be very sick. And so one of our things that we're trying to tell people is that that tree may look healthy, but please don't injure it. Don't move it from one place to another. Don't assume it's healthy.
And another reason why it's having a tough time, which, you know, I remember as a kid going out on hikes and I would see guava trees everywhere, as in the big yellow fruit guava trees. It is so different now. It's all replaced by the little tiny red strawberry guava fruit. I mean, it's just everywhere. It's completely changed on most of the islands that I've been on. And that just kind of, that's one of the invasive plants that really has given the Ohia trouble.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. It's been filling in the understory under the Ohia, and it completely shades out the seedlings of any other species that come up. So eventually we have a 100% strawberry guava forest. And that's not unique for a weed species. Certainly it's one of the super weeds we have. It was just an example of some of the challenges that our forests are dealing with. And it's a 24/7 sort of issue. It's always impacting the forest. It's always going to get worse. So.
And you know, we talk about the interconnectedness. I mean, it doesn't just stop at the forest. I mean, that's where, you know, when you have the strawberry guava and these invasive species come in, they don't do as well as the job of holding down the soil, and so you have increased erosion, and so now you're affecting your marine communities. And you know, it really is that interconnectedness.
Yeah. And you have a lot different water usage and things like that too that affect the entire ecosystem in that area.
Interesting. Yeah, the science. We'll move on from strawberry guava, but and I ate some today.
They are good.
I got to be at the legislature.
Yeah.
I got to be at the legislature today, and I also got to be out at Hawaii at a wetland restoration project, and we ate some strawberry guava, which were delicious. But it, you know, you touched on it, Laura. It takes over, right? And if you stand in a native forest, you know, it's about the Ohia and the lower canopy trees and the mosses all the way to the ground, and it's this really diverse, and Josh used the term when we were getting biodiversity, which is like, well, it's a big word. All that is means you have a lot of different things in the forest and they all play a role. If you get all strawberry guava, and you've looked how slick the bark is on that thing, and there's nothing else but dirt now under it because it shades out everything else, that thing doesn't let water slowly trickle into the soil and into aquifers and into streams. It just runs down and runs off.
Hadn't thought about that.
And
Yeah.
pours into the ocean and creates
Wow.
sediment.
Yeah.
It also evaporates a lot of water into the atmosphere. So it sort of has this double whammy
I haven't heard of.
on the watershed, or putting water into fresh water into our aquifers or streams to drink or use for ag irrigation. Whereas you take Ohia, and the science shows that that thing, along with, you know, a lot of the other little trees and things in there, really slowly slows down water, lets it absorb deep into the soil, and replenishes the aquifer and replenishes
For
the
people to
stream.
understand this. All right, we got a lot to cover,
sorry.
guys. That's okay. No, it's important stuff. Let's move on to number 2 here. Speaking of things in the forest, the EEV. Not endangered yet, is that correct? It's not, I think, officially endangered yet, but this is a problem. We're really seeing them having a tough time. And you talked about the mosquitoes. And
Yeah, I mean, you can group the EV with most of the Hawaiian honeycreepers, and what is significant to them, there's a range of threats. They deal with competition, predation, habitat destruction, but ultimately is another disease that is really one of the limiting factors. And where these birds used to be down in the lowlands, the presence of avian malaria that's vectored or spread by a non-native mosquito, Culex fasciitis, has basically eliminated these birds from the lowlands. And they're restricted to basically a temperature gradient, the upper elevations, where mosquitoes don't persist. And they're restricted there. And the reason why they're threatened so much is, you know, climatic modeling is showing that with just a little bit of temperature increase, we're going to see mosquitoes basically move up to higher elevations. Oh. And these birds are already restricted to the uppermost tops of the mountains. And there really isn't any more native forest for them to go to. And so there have been recent studies that have come out that show that like within the next 80 to 100 years, there won't be very much habitat, very little left for them to persist. Although there's plenty of native forest. It's just not available for them because it's not disease-free.
Wow, disease, mosquitoes, feral cats, rats, they've got a hard time. All right, let's move to the next one, number 3, the yellow-faced bee. I wasn't as familiar with this one.
It's not as iconic as the EEV.
Yeah, but I wasn't as familiar with this.
They are adorable.
One of you explain to me why this is such a problem. This has to do with the silver sword, right? And along with other types of plants that it has an impact on.
Yeah, most people, this is one of those species that, you know, when Josh mentioned that if it's not well known, people really have a hard time.
Right.
So this is Hawaii's only native bee. Honeybees were brought in by people. These native bees arrived here. We think there was one introduction. It got here by itself. And from that, there's 63 different species that arose. And so we've got all of these very interesting bees that are not, they don't form colonies like regular honeybees do. They nest in the ground, solitary, and so that leaves them susceptible to ants. Now, Hawaii doesn't have any native ants, but the ants are out cruising around foraging for things, and they go into the holes, and these bees have no escape from predatory ants. And the bees are really important for pollinating plants, you know, really iconic ones like silver swords, alpaca, which just about everybody knows at this point. So they're responsible for pollinating so many things, but yet they're being really impacted by invasive species like ants.
When you think about for the silver sword, what, it's 20 to 40 years for that to grow? So if that gets killed, I mean, you can see why the cycle being so long, it's such a big problem. All right, here's one that everybody's talked about a whole lot, which is number 4, and that's coral. Boy, how can we slice this up? There's so many different ways to talk about the issues that we're having with coral right now. I think one that's really big here, of course, is talking about the issue with algae. Yep. And how it's having obviously a huge impact.
Yep. And we'll toss coral bleaching on there and we'll talk about that in a minute too if we have time. But yeah, you want to talk about corals for a moment?
Sure. So yeah, and I guess I'm a little more comfortable talking about the bleaching, so maybe we'll do that first. But I think a lot of people are probably pretty familiar with coral bleaching right now, just since we've had such an extreme bleaching event you know, globally since 2014, but also really impacting Hawaii. People have probably seen differences just in Kaneohe Bay after this string of really strong El Nino events where we saw warmer ocean waters. We saw a lot of bleaching of corals, you know, in Hawaii as well as worldwide. And the scary part is that might be just sort of a taste of what's to come if global warming continues on the trajectory that it's on.
A lot of projects around here that have made an impact. It's tough battle, but what's happening out in Kaneohe Bay, for example, I think people are at least making a pretty good effort, but the cost and the time. What have you seen, or what do you see as being having the biggest impact so far as people are trying to tackle this problem, at least here in the islands anyway?
I think you know, it's some combinations of things. I mean, you know, we talk about coral bleaching, and we've had, you know, very high ocean temperatures 2 summers in a row. Looks like we may get another summer of that. Corals expel the algae that they should have, which then causes them to turn white, and if it lasts too long, they die, and that's what that bleaching is, when they turn white. But what we are seeing are that some corals in some places are able to withstand higher temperatures better. So a lot of what NOAA's doing, what the Nature Conservancy is doing in our marine program, the State Department of Land and Natural Resources, is starting to, you know, study, you know, which are the corals that are withstanding.
They're doing some testing out in Coconut Island.
And Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology is doing, you know, some assessment and, you know, on super corals or corals that are going to be resilient. And it's not just about corals, it's what are the things we can do with respect to certain invasive species or other conditions we're dealing with so that we can have our coral reef systems be as healthy as they can be, the things that we can work on, or our forest habitats be as healthy as they can be, so that when there are the things that we can't really do anything about, like El Nino years or warming ocean temperatures, frankly, right now we can't stop that. But what we can do is address invasive algae, do conservation work in those areas where corals are the healthiest and withstanding, make sure that as best we can that the fisheries are healthy, because having healthy fish populations is important to having healthy reef populations. Same thing up in the forest. If we can manage particular weeds so that, you know, as temperatures rise or other climatic conditions change that might stress that forest or stress that coral reef, maybe they'll be a little bit tougher and be able to withstand those things. So there's a lot of opportunity.
And seeing how, you know, there's this connectedness and the impacts that these invasive species are having, one thing that it is drawing the focus to is really going to where you can be most effective and efficient with the resources that you have, and that really points towards prevention. Yep. So we now know these huge impacts that these non-native species are having, and how can we start to begin to focus on biosecurity, and how did they get here, and how can we prevent future ones from coming and actually compounding the situation.
I have to actually comment on that, though. You know, I definitely agree that we need to do better prevention. You know, the more we can keep our waters clean without more invasive species coming out there, the better it is. But instead of, and this is a question we always get from legislators, you know, if I had $1, where would you put that dollar? And that really assumes that if you put your dollar in prevention, that you don't have to deal with the things that are already here, and that's not the case. No. So we always tell them that, I'm sorry, we need $2, seriously, because we can't just let everything that's here go. So the state does have an interagency biosecurity plan that was just released earlier this year, and it's a 10-year plan for what we need to do to protect Hawaii, and it's not just prevention, it's also early detection, rapid response, it's control of these long-term, high-impact pests, and it's also outreach, because people do play a role. We can play a role, we can make things better.
Speaking about different pests, invasive species having an impact, Hawaiian monk seals. This is also this is number 5 on our list here. That's a little picture of the in Waikiki, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
of the new pup. So we hear a lot about monk seals getting caught in the nets out in the ocean and the hooks and whatnot. But I think what we don't hear about as much are the diseases that some of the monk seals can get. Canine distemper, I didn't realize that, and toxoplasmosis. That coming sometimes from feral cats or other types of problems that we have here. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So for the canine distemper, monk seals don't get canine distemper directly, but they could be susceptible to morbillivirus, which is in that same family of viruses. And morbillivirus has led to large-scale die-offs of marine mammals in other parts of the world, some in the Pacific. Monk seals have not gotten that disease yet, but one thing that we've been doing at NOAA is really proactively trying to avoid the catastrophic impacts that a disease like that could have if it came into the population. So starting last year, we actually started a vaccination program for monk seals, and we started pretty small last year. We got a number of monk seals vaccinated on Oahu and on Kauai. And then this year, we just upscaled that effort to start vaccinating the population in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. And as our field season is coming to a close, they've gotten almost a third of the animals up there vaccinated just this summer. So we're really making progress on protecting the population against potential outbreaks of morbillivirus. But maybe one of the more pressing and sort of more complex disease issues is toxoplasmosis. And that's one that's maybe a little bit of a counterintuitive, complicated story, because it actually links cats to monk seals. So toxoplasmosis is a parasite. It has to complete its life cycle in cats. And then the eggs of that parasite are shed through cat's feces, and then they can enter the environment. They can spread through the watershed. They get into the water. They get into monk seals. They affect Nene. They can affect, we've had dolphins affected. So a number of animals can be affected by toxoplasmosis. And we've actually had just about as many monk seals die of toxoplasmosis as from fish hooks.
Wow.
So actually, I think a few more than fish hooks. We've had, we've had 7 animals die from ingesting a fish hook, and we've already had 8 animals die of toxoplasmosis. So when you look at a population of just a couple hundred seals in the main islands, there's 1,400 overall, but just within the main islands, there's only a couple hundred animals. 8 is a really large percentage of that, and of the ones that we actually know their cause of death, that's around 20-23% have been linked to diseases such as toxoplasmosis.
I think it's easy for people to focus on certain things that maybe get a little bit more attention, but they may not necessarily be, in the grander scheme of things, the biggest problem.
Right.
And then also, of course, remembering everything that's connected down the chain to that. So getting to that, we've got a lot of questions, but we want to make sure we get through this list, of course, because this is important. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on to talking about some of the invasive species, even though we're kind of weaving this into the conversation anyway. So let's just go ahead and get right to it. I think we showed the initial list, but let's just start going down this list of what you guys picked for invasive species. And right off the bat, we're talking about rats. And again, this is also connected. And you know, I want to make sure that everybody takes a look at this picture here, because when I first looked at it, I said, "What rat? Where?" I couldn't quite see it. But that's part of the problem. They're smart. They're everywhere, and they're connected to other types of invasive species, of course. And this creates sort of this invasive species almost ecosystem on its own, which really has an impact on so many different things.
Yeah, rats, well, rats make our list because not only is it a current problem, but it goes all the way back historically and has caused problems all the way along the line. Some of the first rats that arrived, they arrived with the Polynesians, and a lot of people don't know that there was a palm forest right on the Ewa Plains, right where the airplane lines up to land at Honolulu and at the airport. Right under that, there used to be a moist, bushy palm forest when the Polynesians arrived. Well, rats moved out and ate all of the seeds, chewed all of the seedlings, and probably chewed on the trunks as well, and kept those palms from regenerating, and so completely transformed the forest. And we know this through all of the pollen in the area, where it's just huge, 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 thick pollen from these palm trees, and then all of a sudden, starting with rat bones, bird bones, and a complete lack of pollen. So we know this is the case for a lot of different Pacific islands where they've come in and they've had huge impacts. Those continue today, where we don't have a lot of ground nesting birds because there's rats all over the place. We're having trouble with birds nesting in the trees. We have to put rat traps and try and get rats out of the areas where our remaining native forest birds are still nesting, just so that they can successfully complete raising their young because of rats.
I think next on this list is for you, Josh. Next is mosquitoes. And we've got a pretty telling picture here that gives people an example of what they can do. Look at that, that's right there. I just want to swat it away. but that just gives you an idea of how difficult it is to deal with this and why important it is because of what it can spread, how much impact it has.
Mosquitoes are, they're problematic for both wildlife, even humans. I mean, they can affect pretty much every sector of society in one way or another through the ability to transmit diseases that are harmful. And I think one of the challenges is really having a landscape scale tool that's effective, that really that could be efficient and actually work. And actually, historically, there was a mosquito species that was on Kauai, Maui, and Oahu, Aedes aegypti, which had been eradicated in World War II. And the reason is because there was martial law, and they were able to really stamp down on it, and they also had the ability to use DDT. An insecticide is no longer legal. And so the tools like that are not necessarily available now. But what is promising is there have been significant advances within the public health sector where there are tools that could be adapted towards conservation that may give us a chance.
Well, I tell you, next on our list here, I'm going to throw this one to you, Mark. I think when I think of feral pigs, I think of the damage they do by tromping around and damaging different types of plants and whatnot, which of course is a problem.
Yep.
But there's more to it than that,
Oh, yeah.
just because they're moving to different
Yeah,
locations.
and we put pigs on the list, but it's also a bit of a stand-in for some other feral animals, and ungulates. They're animals with hooves, and there are no native hooved animals to Hawaii. So pigs, goats, sheep, deer, wild cattle, and what those animals do, the pigs tend to root and really dig up the native forest. Goats and sheep and cattle are browsing animals, so and deer will browse down and eat the vegetation down to the dirt. All of them will eat weed plants and spread weed seeds. But I think I want to be clear up front. I mean, those are the damaging things that those animals, including pigs, can do to, say, a native forest habitat. But I want to be really clear. I mean, we don't need to, and we shouldn't eradicate pigs from the state of Hawaii or any particular island. There's a lot of important culture around pigs in Hawaii, both native Hawaiian culture, both hunting history for both subsistence and recreation, and those are really important things. And so what we're talking about is certain core high elevation native forests that are important not only for that ecology and culture as well. I mean, we looked at Ohia lehua, and that's really important hula plant and iconic in Hawaiian history and Hawaiian culture. So we want to get animals out of some of those core areas, both for their ecological value, those core areas, their cultural and historic value, and frankly their freshwater value, as we've talked about. So fencing and removing those animals from those core areas, but by the same token, we don't have to take them out everywhere, and we should also be doing things to enhance opportunities for game hunting in places, better access in places where pigs can be, better access for hunting, better access for recreation, and so yes, while we should be spending resources on caring for forests and dealing with pigs, goats, sheep, deer, wild cattle, we should also be doing things to enhance opportunity to have those animals in the right place.
I'd say the next on the list that we have here, I'd call this one a very emotional issue. Feral cats is what we're talking about, or free-roaming cats as people. You look at this picture here. I want to leave that up just for a little bit, you guys, and maybe someone explain to me what exactly that we're seeing here in this picture.
So this, I think, is this one from the Kauai project?
Kauai.
So this is actually one of these cats that is living around a seabird colony.
Okay.
So a lot of these are actually pretty far from people. So it's not just someone's cat that got out last night and was naughty and got a bird, but these are cats that are living in remote areas and basically specializing on seabird predation. And so in some of these areas in Kauai, they've been doing a really great job trying to combat that issue. And so as part of their projects, they have these game cameras. And so what you're seeing in that camera is actually a cat getting caught on tape going after one of these birds. And I know one of the guys just gave, well, I think a couple of really good talks at the Hawaii Conservation Conference that just occurred. And man, the numbers that they have of the number of times some of these cats are just going back, and the number of seabirds that just one cat can pull out of one of these colonies, and the amount of the cat's nutrition that's actually coming just from seabirds. It's a really amazing impact.
They are extremely successful predators.
They are.
It's tough too, because there's again such an emotional element for so many people. I've got a lot of questions to get to here, but I just want to make sure that I got through this list first, and then we'll kind of go back and revisit a couple of things. Last one on this sort of short list, at least top 5 anyway, were invasive seaweeds, and I'm sure people are pretty familiar with the damage that can be done by these seaweeds. Gorilla ogo was one that came up. A couple other ones. What would you say is the biggest problem? Is it how quickly they can spread? Just the difficulty of removing? Obviously, those are big problems.
A couple of things. Right now, we're actually not quite sure why the amount of that algae is so far down, for example, in Kaneohe Bay. The Department of Land and Natural Resources and the Nature Conservancy had built these super sucker barges, big vacuums.
I remember.
And we were pulling algae off the reef there and actually composting it. And taro farmers and other farmers loved it. It had a lot of great nutrients in it. The combination of super sucking, potentially warmer water, which may be a coral bleaching problem, but possibly impacting the algae's ability to grow. So it's down quite a bit in Kaneohe Bay, but for many years, and it's still alive in there. And if it has the right conditions, it'll come right back. But what it does is just forms these mats that completely smother the reef, and in fact kill it, because the reef can't do what it needs to do to grow and to spawn itself. It eliminates the what they call rugosity, basically the holes and crevices in the reef that fish live in, and urchins live in, and all the other species on the reef. And so we talked a little bit about habitat modifiers, and basically what that is it just comes in and takes over everything.
So let me get to some of these questions. I think this is appropriate. This is from Georgia in Honolulu. What have you guys learned from maybe other areas in the Pacific that you've seen work for them, that you've either tried here or hope to try? Anybody want to chirp in on that one?
Yeah, we're always in awe of New Zealand.
Yeah.
Really?
Here's an example of how bold and how bold they are. They have pledged to be predator-free by 2050. And this means cats, rats, stoats. And they don't have all of the tools to be able to do that. They don't have all of the technologies yet to be able to do that. But this is part of the challenge. The government has set up this challenge, and that's spawning innovation, that's spawning a lot of work to figure out, okay, well, what does that mean? How many houses has to participate? How much public engagement do you need? Well, it turns out 1 in 10 houses has to get the rat traps, has to participate in this, and I find that amazing. I think they're going to do it.
I guess part of it is just actually committing to that track and getting everybody
and funding it. I mean, it's amazing.
Okay. Here's one that I think you've probably dealt with, Christy. Agriculture inspection protocols at the airport. I believe in recent years they have been improved. What's changed, say, over the past, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I have to say that I don't know who works harder than those guys.
Yep.
They are doing a lot of work with very little. Very few tools. They don't use a whole lot of technology. They have to open the boxes. They have to they have to show up where the cargo shows up. The cargo doesn't come to them. So these guys are probably the most dedicated people I know. And I think when you say things have improved, I think that it's improved against all odds, because they're not getting as much support as they need to get to be able to use technology better, to be able to understand when there's high-risk commodities coming in. New Zealand has a great example of using electronic manifests. This is, the importer sends them what they're importing, what flight it's going to be on, and it's automatically gauged for risk, and it notifies the inspector where to show up and when, and those commodities are set aside for inspection. We don't have that. We need that. We're piloting it, but yeah, some more support for these smart tools would be the best way to do this better.
Okay, here's one. A couple of people asked about overpopulation in the islands. Where would you categorize overpopulation or people as far as the problem compared to some of the other issues that you guys talked about that are endangering some of our species? Where do you categorize that? People.
I'm good.
I think of a bumper sticker. I think maybe it's like the Kauai invasive species bumper sticker or the Maui invasive species, but it's basically, it says invasive species are everyone's responsibility, and I think it really is everybody's responsibility. Everybody has some role to play, whether it's reporting, checking their own stuff, or not being a transporter, and really paying attention to the issues and being aware of what's happening around with our natural environment and what role they can play to either prevent or move so things can improve.
Okay, rapid fire on this one. Sunscreen. Who wants to pick up that one? As to how big of a problem they
I'll
categorize
comment
that.
a little bit on that. The initial study shows that in the lab, oxybenzone sunscreen is harmful to coral. More science needs to be done on that. And absolutely, if we can do our best, whether it's through regulation or public pressure to remove oxybenzone from our nearshore marine environment, that's a good thing to do. I don't want us to think that we've solved the problems on our nearshore coral reef areas by changing our sunscreen. There are, frankly, way bigger issues that we need to tackle than sunscreen. It doesn't mean we shouldn't address sunscreen, we should, but some of the other things we've talked about are way more concerning to me than sunscreen.
And I'm guessing this might have a similar answer. No doubt people would call and say, why wasn't this on the list? Of course,
right.
Again, reminding people that, you're kind of forced to make this sort of a list, not that you don't realize other things. Of course, Coqui frogs came up as one of the questions as to why that's not on the list and what's being done.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody's making efforts with all these different invasive species. Not surprising that would come up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. They're so widespread at this point on the Big Island that it's become citizens' responsibility to control it where they can. And the good thing I see is that there are communities that have bound together that do help each other out. They go to, their elderly neighbor's house and help, applying the citric acid, or with what we call habitat modification, basically chopping the bushes so that they don't have as many places to live right near your house. So that's the Big Island situation. The other situation is, they still arrive here on all of the other islands that are not quite as infested. Not at all, hopefully, for Oahu and Kauai, and we eradicate them when people call, and we do get the public calling. So we eradicate, and then we re-eradicate, and then we re-eradicate. So there's things that still need to be fixed, and I agree. I wish we had a list of 100 worst that fits into the 5 category.
There were a lot of number 6s.
I know, right? I would imagine. Josh, maybe I'll ask you real quick about this. What would you say over the past few years? What are you focusing on in particular that you see that will make a difference in one area? Now, we were talking about drones, for example, in the break room before we came out here. What are you seeing that people are getting a little excited about that's gonna help?
Well, there's definitely new technologies, things like the drone that are making some of the work that we have to do as far as, a lot of the work that we do is monitoring and surveying, and when you get these tools that are now becoming like cost effective. Initially they were really expensive, but they're really becoming more cost effective, approachable, and they're becoming automated. And so the amount of staff time or other resources, like using helicopters, really just to get an aerial view of an area. We were spending $1,000 an hour, on that. We're now a hobbyist who has a drone that costs like maybe $150 can actually get that shot, and they can get it in real time, and you just have savings and efficiencies that's helping. I guess that's one aspect. There's a range of things that are developing.
I think we got time for one more person maybe to mention a tool in their toolbox they didn't have a few years ago.
People? frankly.
I was actually going to say the same one.
Yeah. I'll mention briefly, maybe you can. For us, it's been in nearshore fishery management and caring for coastal areas. Communities in those areas coming together and having seen decline over 1 or 2 generations in the health of their resources, their fishery resources, and wanting to do something about it. Because Stacy's agency, Josh's agency, the Nature Conservancy, Christy, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, we can't cover it all, but when those agencies and nonprofits are partnered up with committed communities who want to take care of the resources right out in front of their neighborhood or the coastline that their family has worked or lived in for generations, that makes a huge difference. So community-based management is a big one.
So we've got a hotline that we wanted to show up, and while we show that, maybe last word from you, Stacy.
Yeah, and
this is a monk seal hotline, I believe, that we have.
And it ties in exactly with the idea of people and people playing a part. And I think getting public buy-in and more public support and more public participation is one of the things that's been really instrumental in helping us manage monk seals in the main Hawaiian Islands. Certainly the remote Northwesterns are a different story. But getting people to call in helps us track the monk seals. It helps us know what monk seals are where, which ones are surviving. But also if there's something really unfortunate like a fish hooking or one stuck in a net, when people call these hotlines, then we can actually go and mitigate those threats and help those seals.
So much to talk about. Obviously we need more hours, but thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. There are lots of stuff online. All of you have websites and different things you can access for people to get more information. But again, thank you so much for being here and making sure that this stays on people's minds. Again, mahalo to all of you for joining us tonight, and thank you so much to all of our guests for joining us. I'm Laurie Amata for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Ahui ho.